Matt, so you're a neuroscience and mental health practitioner.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. It'd be great for you to give us a bit of a non-industry viewpoint, one that's maybe kind of based on sort of science and some of the things that you teach and
Sure, yeah.
schooled in.
Well, the picture that you've heard is mirrored really into what's going on in wider society. So I'll just share a slide with the viewers. Now these are 2018 figures, and whilst we see a population of 66 million people in the UK, we've got a situation where over 70 million prescriptions were written last year for antidepressants. So in that sense, it's quite a bleak picture. I call it a mental health crisis that we've got in the UK. I think we need to be honest about what we're facing. So on the demand side, from the population, we're seeing people not only with depression, but there's over 8 million reported cases of anxiety. So that's on the kind of the demand side. But then if you think of it in terms of the supply side, we've got GPs out there that they see 80%, believe it or not, of consultations now, appointments are stress related, 80%. Hospitals are full. And in terms of the pathology of mental illness, it's not widely understood as to why people get mentally ill. There's no biomarker, and equally so, there's no strategy as to how we might go about, at the moment, addressing this crisis.
That's interesting, Matt. What are some of the things that kind of you think would be worth bearing in mind, Matt, when it comes to prevention, when it comes to keeping happy and healthy and staying well?
Well, that really leads into my slides. Would you like me to do
Please
them now?
crack on, yeah.
So to do the preventative piece, you have to first understand what the problem is. And in the West, we've treated stress and mental illness in a very decapitated manner for the last 400 years. So we treat mental illness as if your head was literally detached from your body, but last time I looked, they were connected. And the way that they're connected and the pathology to mental illness, and there's a slide up on the screen, hopefully people can see, lies in the autonomic nervous system. So autonomic is just a fancy name for automatic. And this is a series of nerves, muscles and organs over which you have no conscious control. So you might understand the premise from a physical health point of view of your body is constantly regulating your blood pressure and your blood sugar level, your body temperature, to maintain something called homeostasis, and that keeps us well physically. Well, the same thing goes on with mental health. So without going into too much detail, there's two branches to this nervous system, and mental health lies in them being in balance, and mental illness lies with them being in imbalance. So someone that suffers from anxiety and with a very heightened state and all the associated biochemistry that's associated with that would mean that they're on one side, one branch of that autonomic nervous system naturally. So those people are the people that need to calm, and that's the things like the meditation and stroking dogs, and that calms that branch and brings you back into equilibrium. People on the other side, on the rest and digest, the parasympathetic branch, they need an excitation of their neurotransmission and their hormones and their biochemistry to bring them back into balance. But by talking that kind of language, I think it gives people an understanding where at the moment there is very little. It's a very frightening experience when you suffer like I have from mental illness. What is happening to me? Perhaps the closest understanding people have is the serotonin hypothesis of depression, and that's typically what people say to me, what I hear back to me, oh, my serotonin levels must be low. That's a very small part of the true picture of what happens when someone is mentally unwell. So this is part of a bigger presentation where I use the idea of an old 1970s toy called a Weeble, and show that when you rock a Weeble, and let's call that a stressor, and we've talked about some of those stresses in life, and they knock you out of equilibrium, they knock you out of homeostasis. So your body's biochemistry and neurotransmitters and hormones are all responding to that stressor. And you can see on the slide, and if the viewers hopefully can see this, I've drawn a bell curve over that slide. And this helps to explain why 1 in 4 people typically suffer from mental illness, because 75% of people have a natural biochemistry and autonomic balance. And 25% of people are naturally predisposed to be out of balance, either one way, to the left, like a weeble being out of balance on the left, and that would be someone that's heightened and anxious and suffering from an agitated depression. And then the other 12.5% would be people that are suffering from depression, from very low mood, difficult to get out of bed, difficult to make decisions, little or no feelings, and they're out of balance on the other side, the parasympathetic side. So in those people, if you give those people serotonin, it'll make them much worse. They need a completely different kind of response to excite their biochemistry, things like norepinephrine, to excite their brain chemistry, to bring them back into balance. Giving them serotonin, SSRIs, Prozac is a disaster.
Right, okay.
So really the answer lies in a balanced autonomic nervous system. And one of the ways in people can do this without any extra intervention and help is through first stopping and just checking to see how they feel. You know, how does your body feel? Is it excited? Is the tension perhaps in the chest or the neck? Do you feel any internal tremors? Are your hands shaking? Are you one of these people that are always tapping your legs? You can see them on the tube. People always tapping their legs, always checking their phones, can't sit still. Well, that suggests an excited body, an excited biochemistry, an excited neurotransmission. And that's where, if you can first recognize those symptoms and characteristics in yourself, then you know, okay, I need to be thinking about calming my body and mind. And it works in reciprocity. So if you calm the body, you calm the mind, and vice versa. And I put up this slide because this is a finger sensor that measures something called heart rate variability. And this is the most accurate measure we have, the most accurate biomarker we have for stress and the balance of your autonomic nervous system. So you can go into the technological route. Wearables, yeah. They are beginning to arrive on iPhones and things. They're not quite there for accuracy. This one I show on the screen here is called a Core Sense, and you can pair them with your phone via Bluetooth, and they give you a nice graphical representation of how you're faring. But as I say, you don't have to use tech. You can stop and dial into your own body and see how you're feeling. Yeah, there's a very good neuroscientist in the States who talks about mental hygiene as a phrase, and he says, how often do you brush your teeth a day? And how often do you actually look after and do interventions for your mental health? Well, maybe it should be as frequent as twice a day.
Is Matt seeing any signs of clues on pathology from comorbidity suggesting underlying root causes, such as correlations with arthritis or diabetes or any other big areas of crossover? Yeah,
there's a pathway I haven't talked about, which is the inflammatory pathway to mental illness, which has a large correlation with some of the things mentioned there. So something we haven't got any time for now, but the gut is a huge element in this. So again, connecting mental and physical health. Have a guess as to what percentage of serotonin is produced in your brain. Have a wild
Is it going to be quite low?
Have a guess.
I mean, I would have thought it would be like 80%, but
but
it's going to be so
close.
So 95% is produced in the gut.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's called the second brain for that reason. And you've got more neurons in your gut than a cat has got in its brain.
Wow. So that's irritable bowel syndrome is very related to stress.
Exactly. So the inflammation crosses that barrier between the gut and the bloodstream, and then you get an immune response. So autoimmune disease, like Parkinson's and Alzheimer's, arthritis, I think was it mentioned there?
Arthritis
was mentioned. So there's a correlation. So if someone suffers from arthritis, they've got an inflammatory condition, and you can address arthritis through healing the gut. And similarly, depression, some forms of inflammatory depression would be an inflamed brain, which isn't like a red throbbing brain as you might imagine it. It's like an arthritic brain. So that means that the circuitry in your brain is much slower. The communication between neurons is slowed, and hence that's why depression is symptomatic of that. So absolutely, that's a really important pathway that we haven't touched upon, and it's I think of inflammatory depression as another type of depression in addition to melancholic depression, which is the very low mood, and then an agitated depression, which is often shown with anxiety, a heightened sense of anxiety along with depressive thinking.
Diet would be something that would really
critical.
change that. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean the key one is to eliminate sugar. Sugar is an absolute nightmare.
Guilty,
yeah.
Yep.
And then all the things that people consider yummy, like all the carbs, the pastas, the pizzas, the rice, the breads, highly inflammatory for the gut, and they do have an impact. So if someone wants a quick win, eliminate those.
Maybe some quick tips. One from Matt for people.
I've just put a slide up on the screen. This is a free course that I've made available for everybody.
Okay.
It's a series of 38 videos. It tells you much more detail about the science of what I've talked about, and then lots of practical tips of how you can improve your mental health and how you can develop resilience to stress. So Brilliant. I'd urge people, that's the thrivecourse.com.
Wonderful. All right, well, I'll definitely be logging into that to find out a bit more information, because we could talk for hours. So thanks for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed it and found it useful. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope it's not too stressful. Thank you very much.